Welcome to A Pastor's Heart. My name is Pastor Patrick. I am so glad that you've tuned in today to see this video. I do hope you watch to the very end. So I've been looking at a lot of different topics that are sometimes talked about in church, sometimes not, maybe not enough, or maybe not deeply enough. And one that's really been kind of in my mind for quite a bit of time, one that I could spend several videos talking about. So depending on the comments, depending on how many people view this and what you think about it, maybe I will dive deeper into this subject. But the subject is, does this belong in church? And as you can tell from the image, am I talking about lighting? Am I talking about audio? Or am I talking about rock music? I'm actually talking about all of the above. What exactly belongs in church when it comes to music? Now, we could start from the very beginning in the Bible. The Bible actually says that, Lucifer, who became Satan, was actually, if you will, the worship leader of heaven. And God cast him out. Now, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day that we can get really deep in and talk a whole lot about. But there's context to that. Why are there songs in the secular, music mainstream like God gave rock and roll to you? Or why does the devil have all the good music? Why are there songs like that exist? Maybe there's something deeper to this whole music in church thing than we'd like to truly admit. Now, I grew up in an era listening to elders talk about how they would call certain things devil's music. I grew up in an era of strictly hymns. You would have maybe a piano, maybe an organ, maybe a pipe organ if it was a bigger church, a choir, maybe a couple of singers. Every once in a while you might have, a violin or an acoustic guitar join in, but that was generally worship. Worship wasn't a full rock band, certainly wasn't lights and smoke and effects. And, I remember back in the day, some people can agree with me when we had what we called slide projectors or overhead projectors, where, if we didn't have a song printed out, we'd have somebody with a Sharpie write the lyrics out onto a clear sheet of film and be able to put that on the overhead so that the lyrics were, projected onto the wall so we could sing along. And that's if we were singing songs that weren't in a hymnal book or, something that was a little new. So music has come a long way in church. Or has it? Let's talk about what music means in church and then what music means outside of church. So you have to understand, what is the purpose of music? What is the purpose of a song? At its basic core, a song is a story. The lyrics describe an event or tell a story. The way the song is recorded, the way it is written, the chord structure, how it's played, the tempo, how fast, how slow, all these things coincide to tell a story, to convey emotion. It has actually been proven that a song will convey the emotion when played. The emotion that's played will convey the emotion of the person who wrote it when they wrote it. So if you take classic songs we know in church, let's take probably the most famous song for generations, Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. A very amazing musical mentor early in my life, he would talk about that song, and he said to us, if you ever hear somebody sing Amazing Grace the way it was truly written, and you don't have tears on your face as they sing it, it's not being done correctly. Because in order to sing that song and convey the emotion that the person who wrote it was going through, the story of their life and losing their family members and being shipwrecked and their life being thrown upside down, but still saying, God, I trust you through all of this. What a deep emotional song when we truly understand its purpose and meaning. And that's what worship is actually supposed to do. In church music, worship, what we call praise and worship, what is that supposed to be for? That is actually us coming to God and coming with praise and worship, coming with thanks for another day, thanks for another week, thanks for helping me get through, but also understanding I'm still not through with all my struggles. I'm still going through stuff. And so I come to worship you. I come to give you my life, my emotion, to say, God, please help me in this. Worshiping, praising. Now, music at its core, we call different musics, we use the word genre. The interesting thing is that that word genre can be the same thing as style. It can be the same thing as, dialect or, different languages. The language of music, if you will. As you can imagine, there are billions of people on this planet. We all don't speak the same language. We all don't look the same. We all don't have the same dialect. And with that, we also don't have the same core styles about us. Whether it's lifestyle, whether it's musical style, activities, what things we enjoy, we're all different. And the interesting thing is that's why there's different musical genres. Most people, when they really think about it, if you sit down and look, you might enjoy many different styles of music. But generally there's one, maybe two, that are at the core of your favorite. Maybe there's a specific band and a specific album or songs that touch you, that connect with you on an emotional level differently. And that's the thing. We can talk about the fact that music connects with us on an emotional level. Because when we hear a song that tells a story that we relate to, we know that the person who wrote that song was going through the very same thing that we're going through, felt the very same way we feel. And that's that emotional connection that music brings together. And the thing is that one of the missing contexts of church music is in today's modern church, have we forgotten what the actual purpose of church music is? Have we forgotten what the context of the words on the page and the notes that the instruments play and the songs we sing? Have we forgotten what that purpose is in church? Now, I could go into some very controversial topics about how some of the biggest churches in the world write most of the music that's sung in churches around the world, and that those churches profit off of it. So you've got churches that don't have the budget to record their own CD or take their worship band and tour it around the world and do Christian concerts. They don't have the budget to market their music. And if they do sing the songs written by other big mega churches, they have to pay royalties to that church for singing their songs. Now, there's a huge debate on whether that's even ethical in church. We think back to the scriptures where Jesus went into the temple and he threw the tables over on the money changers. He said that my house is a house of prayer and a house of worship. It is not a house of profit. Now, this is a conversation for another day because I know ministry costs. It costs money for me to make these videos. It costs churches to broadcast, whether it's on TV, just simply on YouTube or Facebook. It costs churches money to keep the electric lights on. But how much do churches really need to profit off of other things? That's a debate for another conversation. But the premise of praise and worship in church is for us to come together collectively as the body of Christ, to lay down our burdens, to lay our worries at the door, to thank God for another week of time, another week of life, another opportunity to praise and worship Him. Our lights, big sound systems, rock bands, big decorated scenes and screens with all kind of flashy imagery and all that, is that necessary in church? I don't know. Is it? The interesting thing is, I said for the word genre in music, different styles of music. We all actually at our fundamental like to sing songs differently. Whether it's a different style of music we like to sing, or a different emotional mood we're in, or style of behavior, if you will. So the interesting thing is, that's not to say that lights and smoke and, big screens, rock concert style equipment doesn't belong in church. Maybe it's not necessary for all of church. But that doesn't mean it doesn't belong. As I referred to earlier, why does the devil have all the good music? The interesting thing for me is it should allow us to be conducive to allowing as much diversity in the way we worship at church. One of the things that fascinates me is we are all about this word inclusivity, inclusion, diversity. If we are all Christians, if we all claim Jesus as our Savior, then aren't we all serving and worshiping the same Jesus? But yet we still have many different denominations and many different kinds of churches that are very divided. One of the most amazing things to me is we can talk about how many churches equal the attendance or size of what's called a mega church, and how churches are doing that, whether it's large buildings or smaller buildings and multi-campuses and multiple locations and all kind of stuff. But for me, the interesting thing that I don't see a lot of is I don't see a lot of multicultural churches. I see a lot of Southern churches that are, say, 98% African American. Some that are, say, 98% Caucasian, white. You might have a couple of diversity. You might have some, Asian or some Indian or, Mexican, Latino. But we don't have an across-the-board generalization of multiple 4, 5, 6 cultures and ethnicities worshiping together all across this country. It's very divided still. And the interesting thing is that it's been something I haven't seen done in modern churches in a long time. One of the churches I used to attend years ago would sing songs in both English and in Spanish every service. And they wouldn't, sometimes they would sing a whole song in Spanish or a whole, obviously whole songs in English. But a lot of the times, 2 or 3 of the songs during worship they would go back and forth between English and Spanish during the song. And it was all about allowing people to feel even more included in worship by being able to worship not only in their own style, but their own language. And the thing is that, there's been this kind of culture of marketing in church. These are the songs that are popular that we hear on the radio. These are the CDs we want to buy. This is the mainstream Christian worship now. And so our church needs to do it because everybody knows that song, and that's going to get more people to worship. And that's going to get more people to come in church and give and tithe, and that's going to grow our ministry. And it's become a marketing thing instead of at the core of what worship is designed for. Because God never designed for there to be one church in one building. Jesus literally said, go to the corners of the world and preach the gospel to everyone. Go everywhere. Go where people are. Meet them where they are. Meet them in the life that they're living and show them that they can be a part of this without having to just stop. Let them learn to grow. Let them learn to be disciples. Yet again, another story for another day. But the point is that the intention was for many locations across the world, for many different churches, so that people could feel a part of a family, a part of the family of God. Have we gotten churches too big to where people don't feel like they're family anymore? They just feel like they're another attendee at a game. Let's talk about music. Even more importantly, outside of church. Now, as is obvious, you've got very interesting percentages. Even here in the United States, we have over a 50 to 60% ratio of American citizens that claim to be religious. If you look at foreign nationals, if you look at, people that have come over that are overseas, whether for visas or, just immigrants or whatnot, you've got a lot of people that come in that are already Catholic. Maybe they're, from South America or something. You have a lot of people in the Arab community, Islam. You have a lot of people in this country that claim faith in religion. My question is, if over 50 to 60% of people in America do claim some kind of religion, why are there not more religious TV stations? Why are there not more religious radio stations? Could it be because the way that the religious organizations have started Christian radio and Christian TV and whatnot is all about trying to market just like the secular stations, and people don't support it the same way? It's amazing that, you've got Christian award shows like the Dove Awards. You've got Christian artists who've been putting out albums. But it's not the same as the quote-unquote mainstream. It's funny that the Grammys, the Oscars, these award shows that we know about, the Grammy Awards for musical, recognition, they have a division for Christian music. But it's not even televised on TV anymore. They don't really, take a lot of, screen time to talk about it or to recognize it or anything else. It's a genre of music just like everything else, but here's the difference. Every other genre of music, rock, hip-hop, rap, Latin, all these other genres, styles of music are marketed and profited by radio stations, by TV stations, by record producers, by music labels. They make millions, if not billions, selling albums of artists like that. But there's not a huge market for Christian music. Why is that? What has happened to Christian music? Because I will tell you what has happened is in the last 20 years alone, 90% of all Christian radio and Christian music has all been marketed around church music, worship music. Because the big churches that make these albums and sell them is the only money really being spent on a grand scale for quote-unquote Christian music. When I was growing up, one of the major bands of the time, and they're still playing to this day, you can still find their albums, it was a band called Petra. And they had great songs, you know. They had a song, Just Reach Out and He'll Reach In. It wasn't a church worship song, it wasn't a hymn, but it was a story telling you as a Christian how you could reach out to God and He would reach out to you. You had a rock band by the name of Whitecross that had a song called No Second Chances. And the song was about, don't waste this life. You don't have a second chance at salvation. These were songs aimed at Christians to let them understand how to live as a Christian. They were stories. And we don't have a lot of bands making albums like that anymore because there's no money in it. And I just don't understand why the marketing of Christian music has been wrapped up in the marketing of worship. Why does a church that doesn't have the budget to pay musicians professionally, that doesn't have the budget to build a recording studio and make their own music, why does a church like that still have to pay to perform worship songs in church? Why is worship music not a collective coalition of all churches coming together? Why is it not all about Jesus? Why is it all about the dollar? Again, a conversation in more depth for another time. But like I said earlier, I've had, when I was growing up, I heard elders in the church talk about, every style of music except for hymns, except for orchestra and organ and whatnot. Every other style of music was devil's music. Even if you had a Christian band like Whitecross or Petra that was considered rock and roll, that was controversial, and that wasn't Christian music. That wasn't a Christian band. In the 90s into the early 2000s, there was a very popular group called DC Talk. And they were kind of singing, rapping, interesting style. But they told stories. And for me, the thing that I don't understand is we have literally let Christian music completely dissolve the purpose of bringing people to Jesus. And you say, what do you mean by that? See, church music is designed as worship. We come to the church to collectively praise and worship Jesus. But Christian music as a whole should actually be about showing people that they can listen to the style of music they like with actual, what we would call clean lyrics, with actual stories that tell a context of how we're to live as Christians. You can have heavy metal, you can have hip-hop and R&B, jazz, pop, rock, keep naming them, country. You can have all these genres of music, and instead of it being all about the world against you and how you want to die, an example would be how many songs we heard from the band Linkin Park that were all suicidal. Why don't we have musicians and bands out there making songs about Jesus saving you from that suicide, saving you from that bad lifestyle? Why don't we have that on Christian radio? Why don't we show people, hey, if you like Metallica, check out this band, check out Tourniquet, check out this other rock group. If you like, back in the day, there was a band called MXPX that sounded a lot like Green Day. What happened to having Christian artists showing you that you can listen to any style of music and still worship God, still tell good stories, still show how you can be a better Christian through it? We don't seem to have that anymore. It's almost like the church as a whole has forgotten the very purpose of what music is about. Because I'm sorry, we can put truth to it. If Lucifer truly was, if you will, the worship leader in heaven, then he knew better than anyone the purpose of music, the purpose of worship, the purpose of telling a story through song. And that's why secular music is so successful and Christian music is not. Because for generations we said that doesn't belong in church. That doesn't belong in Christianity at all. And then when we had groups start trying to bring music into the church, it's taken decades for us to finally allow it. But now it's a cookie cutter marketing for the worship band to make money on their albums, instead of, why are we here? Are we here to tell a story? Are we here to show people they can come to Jesus for a better life and do it through an album? Have we lost the whole context of what music is about and what it's for? Like I said, there's so many different pathways I could take this conversation about what does or what does not belong. I will tell you, it does sadden me both as a musician and as a pastor to see so many churches very narrow in their worship. They only do one style of music, or they only do one set of things because they think that's what's going to bring people in the door. I miss the days when I could go to what I called a church of diversity, where I could go to a church where they worshiped in many different styles, many different kinds of music. Because the thing is a lot of people may not even know about all the styles of music. I had the opportunity when I was very young to go on a cruise. I went on a cruise ship very young, and we went over to the Bahamas. And the one thing, there's a lot of things that were amazing about that cruise ship, even though I was young. I think I was 12. But the one thing that stuck out, that's when I learned about reggae and calypso music. That's when I really learned about new musical culture that I had not really heard before. I had maybe heard of Bob Marley and a couple other people, but I didn't really know much about it. But when I went on that cruise ship, they had a reggae band on the ship. And when we went to the island, and we went and I saw calypso music on the street in real life for the first time, it stuck with me. It was amazing. One of my main instruments I play is the drums. And so obviously, calypso music is very rhythmic, very polyrhythmic, very percussive, very drum driven. It's a very, drum based, genre of music. It's, and it really, obviously I really like it, partially for that reason. And so, that's one of the things that really stuck out to me. And it's like, I haven't heard. There was a Christian band in the 90s, 2000s called Salvador. And they would play a lot of, reggae infused, if you will. It was Latin music, but calypso, Latin, reggae, it's all kind of variances around the same kind of style. And I really, really loved that. But you don't hear that stuff in church anymore. Because the mainstream cookie cutter, this is what songs should sound like, this is what it should be. I really feel, in this generation, the church really needs to think about next generation. How do we reach the next generation of children? How do we get people not only into church, but keep them in church? And yeah, we may think about, let's have a shorter sermon, or let's tell stories and tell jokes, and let's try to make it more entertaining. That may be a method for how to present the gospel to a new generation. But let me tell you how you can get their attention. Start playing music they like. And I don't mean secular music. I don't mean, the band Imagine Dragons, we're going to play their song before service so that people come in and start singing along with it, or we're going to play Metallica or something. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying understand the types of music that people really enjoy, and find a way for us to make Christian music that fits it. Why don't we have Christian radio stations that really show how you can actually tell the story of Jesus in an amazing, new, innovative way? I was reading a story the other day, and it was talking about how, a lot of people talk about Lord of the Rings being, if not the best, at least top 3 movies of all time. And it talks about how it won so many awards and made so much money, and it's been seen so many thousands of times. And the interesting thing is yes, there was violence, but there wasn't language. There wasn't nudity or sexuality. There was graphic because it told a literal story of life and death and, family. But it talked about how it did so well without the marketing of sex and drugs and language and all these things that other movies seem to have excesses of. And it's just amazing to me that church, where God initiated different languages, different cultures, different ethnicities, and equally different genres of music, but the church has shunned it for so long, and without even culturally admitting it, still does it to this day. And I don't understand the disconnect of why the church as a whole does not take music more seriously. How have we never educated ourselves on the power of telling a story through emotion? How have we lost the biggest critical factor to the relationship with Jesus? So I hope that you continue to tune in. If you're getting any value from these videos, please like, please subscribe, please share. Help me grow the channel. If you feel it, there is a link to Buy Me a Coffee, a little donation site, just to help me to produce these videos, to help us to grow the channel. I really do pray that God is blessing you, and that God continues to bless me and help me to grow this channel. There is a reason that He's talked to me about doing this. And so I hope you've enjoyed it. If you will, leave a comment in the comment section about different topics or different things or questions you may have. different topics that we can talk on in more detail. I look forward to seeing you next time.